moving on to Jadakiss, another individual who I, held in high esteem in the music game. Recently, him and his father were guests on the Joe Budden podcast, and it was revealed that Jadakiss had both of his parents in his life, and that he had sort of a balanced upbringing and even went to a private school. Jadakiss even revealed that all of the members of the Locks went to private school, but despite being in private school, they were still outside. They were still doing anything outside. So this dovetailed into online conversation in which people sort of started poking fun at Jadakiss as to having a Huxtable upbringing. All of this, juxtaposed to his musical content, right? Because if you are familiar with Jadakiss's music and you've heard a lot of his catalog, you wouldn't think that those were some of his those were some of the aspects of his life growing up. You would think that the way he came up, his upbringing was more consistent with a lot of the other artists who didn't go to private school and who didn't have both parents in the house. So, there were some people who were online trolling him, saying that he had a Huxtable upbringing. And Jadakiss took exception to that. And he responded to some of those claims. And so we'll get into that. But first, we'll provide a little context by, giving some background on what we got going on here. So this says Jadakiss claps back at fans accusing him of growing up like the Huxtables. Jadakiss recently fired back at fans accusing him of growing up in an environment similar to the Huxtables household on The Cosby Show. Discussing the comments he's seen on social media during a recent episode of his podcast with Fat Joe, Joe, and Jada, he shut down the idea. Joe agreed, going on to explain that he doesn't respect people who cut ties with their parents. I never respected men who get a wife and get so in love with them that they forget their mother. It should never be no reason for you to cut off your moms or your parents, he said, as caught by Vlad TV. In other news, Jadakiss recently announced that he's teaming up with Beanie Siegel for a new album executive produced by Freeway titled Kiss the Mac. He announced the project in a video on social media over the weekend. So let's get into Jadakiss's rebuff of the idea that he grew up like the Huxtables. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of this here. And we'll go ahead and get into this. So here's Jada. Here's Jadakiss refuting claims that he grew up like the Huxtables.
In the comments that think I grew up like the Huxtable. I'm saying, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with these people, but and coming from where we come from, it's a beautiful thing to have both of your parents.
Yeah,
I know in rap they see all these people. We had both of our parents. Do that mean we wasn't in the street? No. Do that mean our household we had gold spoons? No. My mom's did. She bust her ass. My pop was on drugs. He was able to shake back. I was outside doing shit. I was smart in school. I was athletic, and I was outside.
of course, bro.
All right. So again, we'll all relevant links will be in the description of this video. So I'm going to provide the link to a clip where Jadakiss was on Joe Budden's podcast with his pops, which was the impetus for this conversation, so that anyone who is unfamiliar that can have that frame of reference. We're just not going to play the Joe Budden clip here because Joe Budden's show will flag you for copyright. So I'm just going to refrain from doing that because we want everybody to be able to see this video and we don't want it to limit its potential visibility. But there's Jadakiss trying to save face and say, despite going to private school and despite having both parents in the household, he was still outside and he didn't grow up like the Huxtables and all of that. So what do you make of his attempted defense there?
Sorry, I'm not buying it. not buying it, dude. And I'm not saying that it was actually Cosby Show Huxtable, because honestly, who had that kind of upbringing? You know what I'm saying? Well, I guess there was some people that did. But no, man, I think what he did, I think the reason why he's catching the flack that he's catching is that it's the type of bars that he comes up with. It's his music, man.
Absolutely, yeah.
I wanted to be a Jadakiss fan because the talent is clearly there. But there's too many times when I was trying to enjoy a song or whatever, and he'll get on it. And trust me, bro, there's songs that he's featured on that is bars. Like I'm not, I don't have a problem with it. It's the same Pusha T thing with me with him. Whereas I know you're smarter than that, you know, and you're giving me these types of bars when I know you can do something greater. You know, he's one of those people that is a wise man that plays the fool. And his bars therefore come off that way to me, where I feel like you're playing to these low-hanging fruit and constantly giving me gun bars, coke bars, and I'm not in the mood for that right now. And I told you last week that I still listen to Bankroll Fresh. I do. Every week I listen to the guy. And he's talking about trapping. But Bankroll comes from that, literally. I mean, you can hear it in his stuff where it's grape drink music. And the guy that's making music, he's a grape drink kind of guy. So when I hear that, I go, nah, hey man, he's actually speaking what authentically represents him. So I I enjoy that. But then there's guys that I feel like are placating to that type of stuff where they're it's this classy cocaine bars. I was never a fan of that. Where you're so intellectual that you can intellectualize cocaine bars. It's like, why are you wasting it on this? So so when people will be like, oh yeah, man, you know, Jadakiss, I was trying to hear it. I really was, but to me, it just never really struck. So that's not to take away from his talent and nothing like that. I just never was a fan of it. So I say all that stuff to say is that the people that gravitated towards his music for all these years were under the impression that he was all the way outside. But the interview that he had with his dad, you know, and his dad was pretty much, you know, spoiling it like, hey, man, look, hey, man, he don't want to tell y'all he grew up in private school, though. You know what I'm saying? He had mama and daddy there. You know what I'm saying? Here comes Jadakiss coming off like a kid that was capping all these years. But I was outside. Like, you can't stop me from being outside. I wasn't following the rules. Yes, you were. More or less. You were a good student. You were in athletics. Both your parents are there. Private school. These are all the signs of somebody that isn't trafficking. But of course, all right, Jadakiss, I heard one of his stories that he told on this Fat Joe podcast that first thing they did when they got a record deal was bought a brick. Yeah, they bought a brick from Philadelphia or something like that and started trafficking. It's like, stop, bro. I don't want to hear that. So, me personally, it's a weird thing I have with these guys. I don't dislike Jadakiss, but at the same time, I don't trust him. So when I heard that he lived like that, and I go, well, that's a 180 from all your songs, dude. And hold on, there are songs where he will drop knowledge, which is why I don't care for the coke stuff. But that's my problem with him. So I can clearly see that yes, he did grow up. He did grow up in a different way than his music portrays. So is it actually Huxtable? No. But the people that are getting at you are people that really come from trenches and did that stuff because they didn't have a choice. And it sounds like you had a choice, Jadakiss, and you chose to make music for people that didn't and keep telling and keep perpetuating that same cycle of you can't live out of this circle. So that's the chickens coming home to roost for Jadakiss with this. So is it big time stuff? No. this is gonna blow over just like everything else. Jadakiss is a pariah in the community, but however, this is something that this is something that like, hey man, people gonna always say this now, you know, that you grew up different than your music portrays, and yeah, I'm not opposed to that, and I think that he needs to be held accountable. So with this scrutiny that he's getting, it's not going to end his career, but it's going to follow him now. But what are your thoughts, man, on Jadakiss addressing the haters, saying that, hey, man, I didn't live no Huxtable lifestyle. I was still outside. What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. And yeah, to your point, I started listening to Jadakiss in 2001. I think that album "Kiss the Game Goodbye" that came out in 2001. So that's when I started listening to him, and I pretty much stayed listening to him for the most part ever since. Although he's fallen off, as he's gotten older. But the kiss the game goodbye and kiss of death and some of his mixtapes and the lock stuff. So I was listening to Jadakiss during his heyday, and I never dug into his personal history or his past, but based upon what I was hearing in his music, I assumed that his background was the same as the rest of these guys.
Correct.
It was a natural assumption that I made based upon the content of his music. So I didn't go digging to see whether he had two parents in the house or whether his pops was around or whether he dropped out of high school or whether he was selling drugs or whether he was shooting guns. I just assumed it because that's how he rapped. So that just goes to show you, given the truth of his upbringing, that a lot of these rappers were conforming to the sound that they believed they had to capitulate to in order to make this music. It takes us back to the conversation that we had with Eric Sermon. Jadakiss, who is 50 years old, was a part of the cohort of artists who was conforming to the sound that the music industry was mandating that they put out.
Correct.
And he probably grew up believing that in order to be authentically making rap music, he had to portray himself to have that kind of a background.
Correct.
So he's a part of that generation. It is what it is. Listen, I'm not surprised to hear this. I'm not surprised because these days I don't know what's real and what's not real. So at this point, I'm starting to just default to believing that something is not real until I'm convinced otherwise.
There you go.
Just because I don't know what you're selling me a bunch of stuff now, and you're expecting me to buy it. I feel like I'm on Canal Street and you're trying to sell me a fake bag, but say that it's real Louis Vuitton. If I'm not buying it out of the real Louis Vuitton store, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to assume it's not real Louis Vuitton.
Yes.
So that's how I look at all of these guys at this point. All of these individuals are merely entertainers to me.
Yes.
They are not authentic truth tellers. They're not someone to whom their music I should listen to as a way to view the world or help me gain a better understanding in life. They are merely entertainers who are trying to make a lot of money in rap music and live a lifestyle.
Yep.
No more, no less. That's where it ends with the vast majority of them. So you'd like to believe that they are contributing to their communities in meaningful ways through the music, but that's giving them too much credit. Really, they were just trying to ball out, live a lifestyle, and be rich and famous, and do it by being a rap star. I've always said there is a difference to me between a rapper and a hip hop star. Some of these guys are rappers. The vast majority of them are just hip hop stars, and that's where I draw the distinction. And Jadakiss to me is a hip hop star, not an artist, not a rapper. Jadakiss is also someone who I believe cannot effectively make the shift. So when we're talking about artists who have the capability to age gracefully and effectively make age appropriate music that people want to listen to and actually sounds good, I don't put him in the category of people who can make that shift. I don't.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Jadakiss. I think the last album that he put out as a solo artist was called Ignatius. I think that's the last thing he put out. And I actually listened to it. I did. I listened to it. I think it came out in like 2021, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And you listen to it, and it's more of the same. There's not much of a there's not much of a divergence from Jadakiss in 2001 and 2004 versus the Jadakiss that was present on that album, which also featured your boy Pusha T on, by the way.
Of course.
Pusha T is on one of the songs on that album.
Of
So yeah,
course.
I mean, I'm not surprised by this. So am I disappointed? No, because there are none of my expectations that were violated. I didn't assume that Jadakiss didn't go to private school because I no longer assume that any of these guys didn't go to private school or not have two parent households. And speaking as uh, a black person who at various times throughout his youth was made to feel guilty or somehow different or another because I did have two parents in my household. I always thought that that was a weird way to castigate and sort of try to pigeonhole black people into certain buckets. So to shy away from that and to curate a rap persona for yourself that deviates from that because you were trying to conform to what you believe was the conventional wisdom is disappointing, but also not shocking. So there you have it. I'm not particularly let down because I don't put anything past any of these guys.
Yeah, and to touch on that point of having two parents and stuff like that, yeah, somebody could still have two parents to be outside. So I mean, I totally get that, but I also hear your point as far as him portraying a lifestyle that doesn't sound like you went to private school. My thing, the big thing is the private school thing. You know, again, you could still be a hooligan at a private school, but the type of music you make frowns on those kinds of guys. He doesn't per se say those things, but that's the brand of music that look at somebody that went to a private school as a square, as they would call them, a cornball, you know. And so how can you be a cornball but buying bricks? What's going on here? It doesn't correlate. So yeah, Jada does represent that cohort that I was talking about, where they were completely industry people. Jadakiss is from the generation of the people that didn't actually do the crimes. These young people are actually doing it because the inception was complete. Jadakiss represents the generation of people that were pushing and promoting the lifestyle of being a rapper. What it sounds like, what you need to talk about, what you would have, and if you had to capitulate in order to do such a thing, you did that. And so that's what Jada did. It kind of sounds like that's what Jeezy did too. Because Jeezy's not an idiot, even though he acts like he's an idiot. So they're from the generation of people that just kept it all on wax. Completely entertainer. Rick Ross. I mean, he wasn't really doing anything. But the young people that are actually unaliving other people, the people that got RICO cases. Man, my boy Pee Wee Longway, man. God, I forgot how many years or whatever, or how many millions of dollars they got him for racketeering and stuff like that with his people, because he was actually out here selling stuff. These younger guys listened to these older people and actually did it. So, so that's why this generation of people are still alive. These young people are dying now. Some of these guys ain't making it out of their 20s because the inception was complete. And so right now, what we're seeing with the NBA young boys, the Kodak Blacks, the Pee Wee Longways, the Young Thugs, and all these other people out here, and all the other people that's either getting indicted or whatever, they are the byproducts of what Jadakiss's generation did. And that's the reason why I don't give these dudes much of a pass. The ones that I know are making it up. And that's why I don't like these guys. But I could still listen to somebody that actually did it and he's talking about it. Don't get me started. But that actually did it and talks about it. How do I know they did it? I mean, you don't talk about some of the stuff that these guys talk about unless you was actually around that. The stuff that I hear about with Jadakiss and them, it don't sound like they was really around it. They just keep talking about the bricks and they articulate brick talk. I
Yeah,
can't
but
stand that.
also a lot of the guys who did do it at some point get caught and go to prison.
Exactly.
Or something happens to them. So like
Exactly.
I can believe that Orange Juice Man was doing it because he got bammed up.
Correct.
I can believe that Pooh Shiesty was doing it because he
Exactly.
is bammed up.
Exactly.
So like that, you don't do these things and talk about it on rap songs with impunity.
Correct.
And nothing ever happens to you. You're just
Thank
running around out here doing this stuff actively and rapping about it, and just nothing ever happens to you.
Right.
It's a bit that's a bit of a far-fetched notion for me to fully buy into if I am to consider that you're actually living by what you rap about. So from that standpoint, that alone to me is a dead giveaway that not all is what it seems with some of this stuff.
Exactly.
You just have to accept this as pure entertainment because the people who are really doing stuff are getting in trouble.
Correct.
They're getting in trouble.
Just like AR App. AR App thought that he could talk any kind of way. But once the feds got a hold of all of his stuff, they came right after him. He was actually doing it. Beanie Siegel wasn't. Freeway wasn't. They were the generation before him. And so he heard all these guys talking all that stuff, but he said, I'm really going to be out here doing it and talking about it like everybody else is, but I'm going to give y'all these real stories. His stories were so real, he got arrested for them. So the inception was complete on him. So that's my thing is with these dudes. You know, I get it, man. Everybody trying to make a quarter. It's whatever, man. But Jadakiss has always been in this area for me where I do respect him, kind of. But then I always double back on this thing of, yeah, bro, but you ain't have to talk like that for all these years. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, we'll see. I'll give this, see, I don't want to listen to an album called Kiss the Mac. What you listening to, man? Kiss the Mac. I'm not listening to that. But I'll listen to it anyway to see if he's actually giving me real adult bars. And if he's giving me adult bars, then I'll hold back.
Yeah, we'll see. I will say this. In fairness, I did enjoy the last Locks album that they put out, which I believe that came out in 2020. I think it's called Living Off Experience. I did enjoy that. I thought that was one of the better Locks projects overall. And there wasn't a ton of the foolishness on it. It was still there, similar to what you say about Clips. Like there's still aspects of it present, but you know, I would say that there was a decent amount of maturation on all of them, all three of them, and there wasn't a ton of it. They weren't beating you over the head with it.
Okay.
So I can say that I did enjoy that. But Jadakiss as a solo artist, I haven't really seen the shift take place to its fullest extent. We'll see if it can happen, but thus far, I feel like he's still the guy who's in that frame of mind. So I feel like he's just one of those guys who won't be a part of the generation of artists who are able to get older, become 45, 50, and 60 years old, and be able to be age appropriate with their music. But if I'm wrong, I'd be delightfully proven wrong because I want him to be one of those guys. But thus far, I just haven't seen it.
Agreed, man. So hey, man, you know, shout out to Jadakiss, man. I gave you a hard time with this, and I kind of still want to give you a hard time. But hey, man, shout out to Jadakiss, man. You know, it is what it is.
I mean, it's just it's true. Like again, as someone who listened to him since I was in high school, I never bothered to look into his personal history because I assumed his personal history from the tone of his music. I just assumed it.
Correct.
You know, it's just how hard hitting he was with the sound that I just naturally assumed that he was doing the same stuff that everybody else was doing. So it's not that much of a stretch to make that assumption, is all.
And shout out to Styles P, man. That's my dog out of the group. So yeah, man. Shout out to Styles P.
Yeah, at this point, Styles is my favorite one out of all 3
100.
of them.
Same.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, man. Sheik ain't on your playlist,
No.
man.
No.
I'm gonna listen to a whole Sheik Luch playlist.
Go ahead. let me know if you can get through it. Let me know.
Yeah, bro, you cold.